What's the one piece of advice, you give to our listeners?
I think it will serve young professionals way more than anything else. It'll be better than any education you can do. Just being the person that someone relies on. So putting your hand up for work and then making sure that you're getting it done and getting it done to a good quality. Outwork everyone is the easiest way to progress. If you work harder than everyone else, you will progress very, very quickly.
Thank you for listening to the podcast thus far. The one favor I would ask, if you're enjoying what you're listening to, is to press the follow and subscribe button on whatever media platform you listen to us, as it helps us grow our network and grow the podcast. So thank you and enjoy the podcast. Hello, and welcome back to Alchemy Uncensored. We're on our third season, and we promise you that we'll bring in more valuable insights into the financial and tax sector of the UAE. Today, we've got James Evans. James is the CFO at Holo, a rapidly growing prop tech startup, where he has helped raise over $50 million in funding as a startup-focused CFO. James brings a unique perspective as one of the youngest executives in his field, navigating the challenges of scaling companies, managing investor relations, and driving sustainable growth. With a passion for mentorship and developing future finance leaders, James shares insights on the critical role of finance in early stage companies, the importance of having and being a mentor, and how to build financial foundations that enable startups to thrive. James, how are you getting on? Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, look, I guess, James, we've known each other quite a few years, and I've seen your success, your rise from being back in Kent many years ago in a big corporate environment, and then I guess making the move into the startup world. And I guess one reason why I think I connected with you as a starting point, I've seen a post you did maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago that went pretty viral, to be fair.
Yeah.
And I said I'd reach out and see how you've been. So just quite keen, to give our viewers a bit. And thankfully, this is a video, so people can see you are very young, a lot younger than.
Hopefully, still look it.
So I think for our listeners and viewers, James is definitely the youngest guest we've had on the podcast, and we're going to go into lots of different aspects. Probably going around, going from a big corporate world to startup world, raising funds. As we touch on mentorship and mentees, it's a really good episode, especially for the younger generation that may feel imposter syndrome. James was with plenty of bankers even this week, so he can give you a lot of insights what that's been like. So yeah, James, just quite keen if you can give a bit of a high-level overview of who you are and how you're in the seat today.
Look, I have the most traditional finance person start. I did 5 years at PwC. I did 2.5 in audit and then 2.5 in their deals department. Moved to Kentech and got really, really lucky with who I worked for there. It was a CFO called Ben Jones, who was phenomenal. I didn't actually report into him when I joined, but he spent so much time coaching me and really is still to this day the guy that I lean on when something goes wrong, and he's the guy that I call. And then funnily enough, I got introduced to Alchemy after about 3 years. You guys had 2 offers for me. One was another big corporate and one was Tarabat Gateway, now Tarabat, a startup. And it was actually WeAm that convinced me to go to the startup. Look, the money was better at the corporate, but WeAm I had a conversation with her and she was like, look, you're not a corporate guy. She's like, you seem to thrive in that startup environment. So look, I'm glad she exists. I'm glad we had that conversation, because 5 years on now, and she was definitely right. So then at Tarabat, we raised the Series A, which was $33 million back in 2021, 22. And at that point, I got an offer to be a CFO at a startup called Ogram, which was really exciting for me. One of the things I'd spoke to Ben about was one of my big career goals was I wanted to be a CFO younger than he was. I beat him by about 6 months, so I was happy with that. And then at Ogram, it was another startup experience, difficult, stressful, a lot of grey hair.
You still kept your hair anyway. It doesn't look very grey from what I can see.
I know, it's not thinning, but the beard, I don't know if these cameras pick it up, but the beard is going grey quickly. And then after we'd raised at Ogram, I actually got the opportunity to join Holo, who I'm with now. And I really loved what the guys were building in the space. It's a home buying platform, and the guys themselves, they come from a mortgage and real estate background. I really switched on founders, knew the industry incredibly well. And when I was just having conversations with them, you just got that feeling that these are the founders I want to work for. These are the founders I want to work with. I've been there just over a year and a bit now. We just closed our Series A.
Yeah,
$22 million. It was led by Impact 46, a big Saudi VC. And then we had support from Mubadala on the round, which is obviously incredible. They were the reason I was with some bankers yesterday. It was one of their invites. But it's just been a really great journey for us, I think, looking at the company and honestly being in startups in general, seeing the ecosystem evolve here has been phenomenal, where we're starting to see that second wave of big startups now, because I think historically you had Kareem that everyone looked up to as like the big startup that had made it. And then for a long time, we didn't have anyone else. But now you have the Tabbies, you have Tamara, you have loads of really great names. You have Swivel, who obviously had a bit of a difficult list, but have really recovered well from that. You have Anghami, who's starting to recover on NASDAQ now. You have Property Finder, Bayou, and it's just great to see because you're seeing that second wave now. And I think what we've noticed in the ecosystem is that really gives back to us, right? Where now investors are like, okay, we have these companies that can graduate, can exit, and can be phenomenal businesses. And it just helps build that confidence. So I think that's why you're seeing people like Mubadala come into the space more, where they do see this as a bit of the future as well.
To go back on there was obviously Ben. Obviously, I know Ben for many years as well, and probably one of the calmest individuals.
Yes.
He's the definition of a calm CFO, I would say. But the reason why I really liked the post was I think when you resigned, because we see it so often in recruitment where if someone resigns, the CFO or whoever it is throws the kitchen sink to try and retain the staff, especially obviously you were a high performer. Of course, he probably wasn't pleased with the news, but again, obviously as in your post that, there's perspective, there's an element of fairness, and, he wished you all the best on that. And that's a very rare thing to see. And that shows, I guess, his maturity and, belief in you as well.
It is, yeah. I mean, the one thing he told me when I actually resigned, he gave me a day. And then he said, let's have a conversation about it. And bear in mind, this was during COVID, so it was a Teams call, so it made it a little bit more awkward. But the first thing he said to me was, I don't make counter offers. He said, if you've made the decision to leave, there's nothing I can say to you that will keep you. He said, even if I offer you more money, you're going to stay for 6 months, and you're still going to have that thought in your head to leave. And I think what I was very clear to him about was the most difficult part of the decision was actually leaving him. I know that makes me sound like a crazy ex-girlfriend, but I'd spent 3 years from learning from someone that I considered to be one of the best in our field. Like you said, from who he is as a person to the actual financial capability and knowledge he has. And I've been so lucky that he continues to be a friend, a mentor to me, never ignores my calls. And I think over the past 5 years post leaving, I've probably called him a lot of times, especially in those more difficult times that you have in startups, where there's maybe your finance team is generally a bit younger in startups, and generally speaking, founders aren't always the most financially knowledgeable people. So having someone like Ben, where I can pick up the phone and say, look, I just need to have a sounding board here. And it's never been direct advice from him. It's always been that he sort of walks me through my thinking and gets me to that answer. There has been some direct advice, more on leadership than anything else. You talk about him being calm. That was one thing he said to me when I was leaving was, you're not allowed to stress as a CFO. You're not allowed to visibly stress because if the man with the money stresses,
it trickles down to
everyone stresses.
So, no. And look, I think, I said, he's a great guy. So, but it's refreshing to hear that approach in a market where obviously we're always stuck in the middle, where we get people who go through a whole process, get counters, and then they stay, and then 6 months, 4 months, they're calling us again. So look, I guess what I want to dig into now is firstly the switch from a proper corporate, as you said, you've been in Big Four, PwC, worked in big organizations, Kent, or they have a proper corporate, there's a proper finance function there, which is rare in the Middle East. For people that are being approached or thinking about moving from that sort of environment to a startup, how did you find it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a shock to the system, I think, first and foremost. So I've always made the joke that every job I take, I seem to get smaller. So I went from PwC to Kent Tech. When I joined, it was still a semi-family owned business. Like we had PE investors, but the CEO was still the daughter of the original founder. And although we were a big business, like thousands of people, it still very much had that family feel to it. I think Ben actually brought a lot of structure into that company in terms of where they are now as well. And I mean, now that company is completely different from when I was there, just in terms of size. So even when towards the end of my time at Kent, it was becoming a big corporate. And then that move to Taraba, I think I was employee number 21 or 22 at Taraba, second finance hire. So that was a real shock where you sort of, when I'd gone from PwC to Kent, the adjustment was different systems. When I went from Kent to Taraba, it was, no system. And you're sort of building as you go with that. And I think it can be scary for people, especially if you've spent a lot of time in corporate environments where you sort of have that process as a security blanket.
Machine.
Yeah. But what I really enjoyed was the job description was so vague in startups that it was like, I've always described it as startups, and you'll know this yourself from starting Alchemy, that it's just a big pile of problems.
Too broad, the JD. No, you can't fit everything in. Yeah. And the reality is, even the founder, whoever's writing the JD, they don't even know what's going to happen because, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, is the old saying. But yeah.
And it's like, you have that freedom just to take different problems, right? So early on in Taraba, helped get our office set up, helped with a little bit of HR stuff.
HR, legal, everything.
Yeah. And it's scary because you're like, I don't know how to do any of this stuff. But at the same time, no one else does either. And I think as long as you're approaching with the mindset of, I'm going to learn how to do this stuff. I'm going to really, really learn on the job, rely on network if you have it, or the people around you that know this stuff better than you. You can move really quickly with that. And I think that's what I've seen with my career is I always make the joke, if I didn't go into startups, I wouldn't be a CFO today. There's just no chance. I could have put everything into my career. Maybe I'd be a finance director, that sort of level, but I wouldn't be a CFO in corporates. Like Mars is not coming tomorrow to offer me a job. And I think that's maybe how you balance that risk, right, of joining a startup, because there obviously is a risk that the company goes under or whatever it may be. But for me, that risk is not only mitigated by sort of equity offers and what it may be, but also the career acceleration that you can get with it is, for me, that's the risk mitigation that at least if it does go badly, I'm going to be at a different position to where I was 2-3 years ago.
You're going to be, with greatest respect, quite ahead of your peer group because, you learn everything.
Yeah.
It's true going through the hard times that if you were in a job where it was plain sailing the whole way up, then one day you get a right clip in the face, then that changes everything. Well, as you said, you've been exposed to the good, the bad, and the ugly pretty early on.
Yeah, and
in your career, which again is standings,
Yeah, and there's a lot of ugly in startups. Yeah. So I think that getting punched in the face repeatedly is kind of the startup experience. But at the same time, I think that really sharpens you as a professional. I think particularly in finance.
Yeah, like down the line, where in 5-10 years time, you're going to be going for roles, or you could be interviewing. You don't know what's going to happen, but the exposure you've had is going to make you the calmest man in the room because, when you get put in these scenarios, you've been there and dealt with it, which I think is great. So for you, as you said, it's the systems, dealing with founders who maybe aren't, obviously because I guess you were the number one person. I guess you were that guy now, while obviously in prior roles you had a CFO, that you had a bit of a sounding board that to push back on things, etc.
And I think as well what we're seeing with the CFO and finance roles in general is there is a more strategic expectation from the role than there was historically, because you are talking to the guy who kind of oversees everything. End of the day, stuff comes back to numbers. And I think particularly in startups where cash flow is king, the CFO becomes that sort of more strategic sounding board for founders at times where if it's a sole founder, maybe they lean on you. If it's two founders, maybe you're the third guy in the room. Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting position to be in at times where it's like you have to balance that. Am I the guy pushing them or am I the guy pulling it back? And it's sort of, you have to make that call on the fly depending on how the founder is feeling. And it's one day you might be the guy saying, hey, let's go spend $1 million. And then the next day you might be the guy saying, hey, let's not spend $1 million. So I think it's
a lot of emotional intelligence.
It is, yeah. And I think that's something I've grown into. Like, I don't think it's always been a strength of mine. I think my partner would probably attest to that as well. And like, hats off to her for getting me there in the end. But I do think in any role really, like emotional intelligence is going to take you really, really far, because at the end of the day, people like working with people they like. And emotional intelligence at its core is just being able to connect
I think
with people.
The most important thing is within the business and outside the business. Our whole life in any role, it's about getting things done.
Yeah.
And things that you have no control over, you need to motivate someone to do that for you. Be it someone pay an invoice, be it someone sends you information. And if they don't like you, the reality is they will do it, but maybe they won't do it when you want them to do it. So I think the building relationship side, and to your point on the future finance, CFOs, finance people, it's a business partner.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing with AI. with tasks in theory allegedly becoming easier over time, it's going to free people up, where the power of influencing is just going to keep going up and up.
It will, I think, as well. And I think it's finance people should actually look at that with some excitement. Like when you look at AI and how it can impact the finance function, it's going to take away a lot of the more monotonous tasks that exist in finance. I think anyone who works in finance will know that there is a huge amount of monotony in our jobs, be it a month-end close, general posting, AP running, all that stuff. It's not exciting work. And I think if AI can come in and help clean that up, help people do that a bit quicker, the way that I've sold it with my teams is, okay, you have time now to do the real value add stuff for the business. You get to look at the more strategic stuff. You get to look at the more analytical things. And that is not where AI is going to come for you. Because if you can stand out in that regard and you're someone who can stand up in a room and guide people towards the correct decisions and then sort of be right 85, 90% of the time, you're going to be a really, really high value person. I will say though, if there's younger finance people watching this, please still do your accounting qualifications. Like we need more. Yeah. There's like a huge shortage of ACCA people at the moment. And I don't know whether that is a slight push. Like I've seen this in hiring, and I'm sure you guys have as well. Everyone wants to be an FP&A now. Yeah. No one wants to be an accountant. And it's like, my whole thing is you need to spend time in the books being an accountant to be able to do great FP&A. Because if you don't understand how companies are built, how the accounting books are built, you're really, really going to struggle on the analytical side.
It's funny because actually I was speaking to a senior candidate 2 weeks ago, and she's all FP&A. She's all commercial finance. And by her own admission, she's like, I know I'm going to struggle for a CFO role because I haven't got the, not the basics. I'm sure she obviously has the basics, but that foundation is not there. And it's through her whole career. So, I think there's a lot of learning there that you need to have the foundation. Of course, everyone wants to do the sexy side of finance, which is FP&A supposedly, but you need to have that side. So I guess the area I want to go into now, which I think is going to be of such value, because given the amount of money investment that's coming into this part of the world compared to everywhere else, it's the biggest area for, senior finance guys, because of course, when this happens, they're going to be at the table. Talk me through, because you went from, as we went through the corporate world, settled into senior roles. How did you find raising capital, speaking to people that you've never spoken before? Just giving us a bit of a walkthrough through that whole, part of your career.
Yeah. I think I got lucky at Kentech because we had PE backing. So although I wasn't the contact for the PE firm, I did put together a lot of the reporting that we had to do to them and sort of like walk through a lot of that stuff. So at its core, I kind of understood what investor reporting looked like and what the quality expected was there, which was obviously that's post-investment, it's not pitching. But I think by having that exposure early on of being like, okay, this is the standard, that really helps improve. Because I think one of the things that people get really, really wrong with fundraising is they think it's won and lost in the pitch. It's not. The pitch is a way to get investors excited and it's a way to get them interested in looking at your business. But the reality is deals are won and lost in DD, right? That is where you're getting into the nitty gritty of the finances. You're getting into the nitty gritty of the product, the team, everything. That is where you are winning and losing deals. On the pitching side, I was really lucky. So Abdullah, the founder at Taraba, is a phenomenal pitcher. So to be able to watch him do it and learn from that was great, because I have zero sales experience in my career. And at the end of the day, pitching is sales. So I needed to learn. And I think what I did there was I was very eager early on with him to say, I want to be involved in the fundraise. I want to sit on the pitches. And the way that I presented it to him was, look, I'll be the guy behind the screen. I'll have the numbers. And then if people are getting questions at you, I can get you the answers quickly. So first, like, get yourself in that room to be able to learn from someone by showing the value. And I think as a finance person, that's going to be by being the numbers guy, understanding the company's numbers really, really well. That would sort of be step one, where you're now a part of the process and you're considered a part of the process. Then the next area that I think finance people really need to focus on is you're going to own the data room and you're going to own the financial model. It's very easy just to set up a folder and dump everything in it. Terrible idea. Make sure your folder structures are really, really good, really clean. Show professionalism in that, in the most basic of things. People don't think about this, but just as an investor, if they're coming into your data room and the structure is really, really clean, where it's, you've got folder structures, financials, underneath that, audited financials, financial model, whatever it may be, that builds so much trust because the investor then sees that as, if they put this much time putting the data room together, they must be all over their numbers and they must be all over their data. And have that with every file within that. So if it's an Excel file, have it branded by your company, have a little bar at the top, have everything look the same, feel the same, because at that point, you're not then getting questioned on the content of the numbers, you're getting questioned on the message you're trying to get across. And sort of having that consistency from your pitch to your data room, where the data room matches what you've said in the pitch. So whatever numbers you've presented for the future, your financial model matches those numbers. That is where deals are won and lost to me, where once you get through that point and you've got through DD, you're at terms, you have a deal. So you still have to go through all the legal negotiations, which at that point, look, get a good law firm. Like I've done this 5-6 times now and I'm still the first person to say we need a law firm. Like I am not a lawyer. And that's more of a back and forth about protections and things like that. But I think my role in that moment, and I've said this to founders, is I am here to protect you. That's my role. And that's also our legal team's role, is that I am making sure that this deal protects you, whatever that may look like, that you're not giving away too much of the company, that you're not giving away too much control. At the end of the day, you are the guys who built this business to be what it is. So we need to make sure that you are remaining in an environment where you can continue to do that. Now, that sort of nuance of negotiation comes from really good investor relations. So you can't have those more difficult conversations with an investor who hates you. Yeah. You need to make sure that throughout that whole process, you're building that relationship. And it's silly things, right? So I always tell people I have a calendar where every VC we speak to, I have their birthday on it. And it's those simple little messages because as you'll know, relationships are not built in the context of a deal. Relationships are built 6 months prior, 2 years post. And it's that continual touch point with them. And similar with candidates and recruitment, right? Like keeping up to date with them is so key. So I've always had an eye on not just who are our investors and who are we trying to raise from, but who are we trying to raise from in the future? Who are potential investors for way down the line? And making sure that I keep that relationship with them. And I think it can be scary the first time doing it, where you're maybe talking to a Mubadala, for example, which is a huge asset manager. But if you really break it down, you're speaking to people who work at Mubadala. And at the end of the day, people are people and they want to be treated that way and they want to have conversations with people and they want to build relationships with people. So I think just really focusing on that is so important.
Again, for our listeners, and if there is sensitive information, obviously don't, but obviously you mentioned, Kent, you got exposed to, and you've obviously been dealing with investor relations, those reports, like how do they differ? Is it just you're putting your folks in different areas within the business trying to get those stats across? Or is it, for someone who's never done it, is it a thing once you've done a few, you sort of have a pretty good idea of how to do them? Or
most finance people would probably be sort of aware of like your internal management reporting that you do. Now, the way that I've always broke it down is management reporting is brutally honest. So we're using that report as a team to actually make changes to the business to try and, improve. Investor reporting is still honest, but it's slightly
more of a story, I guess.
Yeah, and it's about guiding people to the right outcomes. I think that honest reporting will show up in your board meetings where you're having those decisions. And to be honest, if there is a crisis that needs to be solved, you're not waiting for a month-end reporting to tell your investors about it. You're calling a meeting, you're having it. So I think the investor reporting is really, what story are we trying to tell people here? And it's broken down into that month. So what was the story of September? What is the important stuff? Because not only are these people invested in the company and have a financial interest for you to do well, they are also going to be the people who help you raise again in the future. So you need to make sure that you are getting them on track with whatever you're going to be pitching to future investors. And one of the easiest ways to get future investors interested is if your current investors become your biggest cheerleaders. So if you're doing badly, be honest. But if you're doing well, guide that story. Like give them, the cliff notes for what they should be cheerleading about. And I think as well, what people get really wrong in reporting is I've seen some where it's just 20 P&Ls and there's no commentary, there's no graphs, there's no guidance, there's no story to it. And it's just, no one's reading that. People are getting 3 pages in and binning it. And again, to go back to Ben, he was the one who really helped shape how I think about reporting and how I think about stories. And it's like, there has to be a flow. It has to be shortish in length, and it has to be interesting to read. It can't just be this purely financial report.
Going to non-financial people as well, I guess.
Exactly. So not every investment professional is a through and through finance person. And at the end of the day, if you're working in startups, you're a tech company. You need to talk about your tech, your products, everything, because it may not be that the full value of the company is visible on a P&L, that you've done so much that's non-P&L related, but everyone needs to know about that and you need to be shouting about it. And then I think what the other thing we do with reporting is we do a quarterly report that goes wider. So it goes to people who aren't invested in us, who maybe would in the future.
Yeah.
But that's probably a bit more restricted on the information we share and it's a bit more high level, the highlights of the company. But you're constantly creating touch points for that person to reach out to you.
And, I guess one area for people who maybe are just starting the journey in that space or people who aspire to be in it, high level stuff. Like, what aspects were you surprised you had to do, or what parts of the whole fundraising do you really enjoy? Is there any stuff which you don't enjoy, but just the good, the bad, just being honest, sort of stuff you enjoy about it?
Yeah, I enjoy what happens with the company off the back of a pitch. I think the actual process of pitching it's a sales thing. It's not really my vibe. Like I don't think I'll ever be a great pitcher. But I think what it allows you to do as a company is almost sharpen your strategy. If you're constantly having these calls with investors where you're talking about what you're going to do, that ability to look at it and say, are we actually right in that thinking? And it gives you this opportunity to almost reassess as a business. I heard Chris Taylor from Deem talking about this yesterday, actually, where he was saying when they were going through a transaction, it made them sharpen their strategy so much because they had to present the strategy that they then got into rooms where they're like, this isn't right. We're not doing this the right way. So I think that's the really, really fun part of fundraising is it gives you the opportunity to get better as a business. And especially when you're being challenged by investors
you're under
as
scrutiny
well.
all the time, yeah.
Yeah, and they may bring someone up that they say, oh, we saw someone else do this. It didn't work. And maybe you haven't thought about it. And it just gives you that opportunity to think and try and change things. For parts I don't enjoy, I mean, sorry to our legal team, but I will never enjoy dealing with lawyers.
Well, I can second that as well. Would you believe? I think everyone in business, bar them.
Yeah. It's a necessity within those transactions, but to be honest, for me, arguing back and forth over a sentence in a legal document is not my idea of fun. And honestly, fundraising is tiring. It's stressful.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah.
It's long. It's a lot longer than you think it's going to be.
But I guess the thing as well as you bringing up lawyers, because you've got your lawyers, but then they've got their lawyers. So, you can be thinking, this is perfect, this is done. And then it comes back to you with, well, they've actually said, boom, 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 what do we accept, what we don't accept. So yeah, very tired.
And it's way longer. I know everyone thinks they're going to go out, they're going to raise a round, it's going to take them 3 months. Yeah. No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's going to take you a really long time. You're going to be knackered. You're going to be a lot more stressed. You're going to have a lot more gray hair.
You're looking very fresh.
So I'm 2 months out on closing now, but I think, and then everyone thinks it's going to be really, really fun when you close. It's going to be this big celebration, but in reality, it's a day of PR and then it's back to business.
Yeah. As well, just to give people context as well, because I know just before we started, it seems it's so time consuming.
It is.
For you, you've openly said, obviously now you have a time, you have a window now where you can actually go back to what maybe you were hired to do initially. Of course, you were hired to help in these things, but it seems, again, I haven't been through it, but it seems pretty full on. And as you said, you get a day out from PR and then it's like right back to business.
Yeah. And I'm actually excited about that. So we were having this conversation before we started that I think I've been fundraising for basically 4 years straight at this point across 3 different companies. I'm actually really, really excited to be a finance professional again. And look, I was really lucky through the fundraise that I have a phenomenal team at Holo. I have 3 people in my team who are superb, who I could lean on so much, who would pick up the BAU. And I think they embraced it as an opportunity that was sort of, okay, James is going to be really busy with this stuff. Like he's not going to be able to do this. And it gave them the opportunity to do that stuff, which I think is really, really exciting. So I don't know whether they're excited or nervous about me getting stuck back into BAU. But I think it's, you could come away from a fundraise and sort of think, oh, I can have that drop in emotion where it's like, it's done. What do I do now? And I sort of had that moment a few times in my career. where I'd like become a CFO, then raised money. And it was sort of like, those were the two big goals I had for my career. Yeah. But now I'm getting really excited about finance and going in, and it sounds, maybe only people who listen to this podcast will get this, but going in and correcting the accounting system, getting better systems in place for ourselves, and also as a business, refocusing on strategic growth. Because I think even for the founders during a fundraise, it takes so much of your attention that it's very difficult to think about anything else in regards to the business. And you make all these plans for post-fundraise, you close, you get cash, and then you're like, oh, we can actually do this now. Yeah. So we've launched our big marketing campaign at the moment, which it'd been planned since January because we were waiting to close on cash for the fundraise. So that's really, really exciting. And then you get to do all this stuff now. And then it's sort of, okay, we know we're going to be raising again and whenever, like startups never stop raising. But how much can we get done in that window? But I do say to people, look, the other thing is take the holiday after you close. I took 5 days off, and like true 5 days off, like didn't check emails, didn't check WhatsApps, didn't check anything. If you're getting into these positions and you do a fundraise, take the week off. Once you close, once everything's done, take a week, but take a genuine week. Like if you have the ability to leave your phone at home, do that. Because I think what you'll find is if you don't, you're so burnt out.
Clock, yeah. Thank you for that. That's great way to explain. So we're going to close, I guess, on this question, which I know is you're something deeply passionate about, is all around the importance of being a mentor and also having a mentor, especially for young finance leaders. As you said, you've been leaning on Ben, and I'm sure there's other people as well, but how valuable has that been for you? And yeah, just to give some insights to that would be great.
Yeah, I think one thing that people always look at with mentors is they think it's going to be great because it's going to be a sponsor for your career, which does happen. But I think people probably focus too much on that and then get disappointed if it doesn't happen. The way that I looked at mentorship was I didn't know what it looked like prior to Ben. And then I realized that mentorship was staying in the office with me an hour after everyone left and walking me through something. It was bringing me into a room that I had no business being in. It was letting me, do tasks that were way above my level. And then behind the scenes, he's correcting the things that I got wrong and then coming back to me and saying like, this is where you went wrong. But I think what it allowed me to do was it allows you to progress a lot more rapidly because you're just getting way more exposure. And on top of that, not only are you getting the exposure, but you're getting someone to guide you through that exposure as well. And I think that's so, so important because without that, it's very difficult to progress in your career. Like obviously, as you gain more experience, you will be exposed to more things that will happen naturally. But to have someone who truly cares about you doing well in those things is so important because I think for Ben, it was more than just, I want James to be good at his job so he can be good for Kentech. I've always felt that he genuinely cared about me as a person and wanted me to see me do well. And then for me, I've taken that into being a mentor because I've always said I got so lucky with Ben. It would be the worst thing I could do if I don't pass that on to someone else, if I don't continue to do that. And then I think through being a mentor now, I've got to learn what he got from our situation where you learn a lot in being a mentor. Like I've had conversations with people where I'm trying to guide them through something, I'm trying to coach them, and I've gone away and been like, oh, wow, like I never thought about it that way. So I think people can look at mentorship as sort of a time sink or whatever it may be. I actually look at it as a selfish act because I think it makes me a better leader. It makes me a better finance professional. And again, like I said, I think I'd be doing a disservice to Ben if I didn't then pass it on to someone else.
Well, I think the biggest thing to take from what you've just explained there is that it doesn't sometimes need to be this formal thing where, I need to find a mentor, where am I going to find one? The mentor could be right in front of you.
Yeah.
Because I think the biggest thing, how you can naturally create a mentor is by saying, hey, I want to help. Can you give me something else to do?
Yeah.
Can you get me to the next level? Can you bring me to this meeting? Can you give me a task which is maybe above my station? That is, and that's the biggest thing because we get a lot of guests on, obviously talk about being mentors or mentees, but you don't sometimes have to go down a formal route. As you said, by the sounds of it, the biggest influence you had wasn't going down a formal route. It was just someone that was there to give you their time. So yeah, I think for our listeners that the mentor that you're seeking could be the person you're speaking to every day.
Yeah. And it's not like you're going to sign a contract with this person,
Exactly,
like mentor-mentee relationship. To your point, one thing that I've done throughout my career is I've put my hand up for stuff. I think for younger finance professionals, that is the easiest way to stand out. Everyone in finance is overworked. If you're willing, and this is maybe not very work-life balance of me, but if you're willing to be the person who's going to stay a little bit later, do a few extra hours and do stuff that's outside of your remit, you will stand out very, very quickly, because those are the sort of people that become the guy, right, that people rely on, or the girl that people rely on. And that's what I had with Ben, where it was just anything he was struggling with, I'd say, I can help.
You were just mad for work.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, probably the first year that I worked for him, I probably really annoyed him, just by being like, I want to do that. Let me do that. I can help you with that. Yeah. But it's a really, really easy way to stand out. And then I think when you get into those more senior positions, it creates a habit in yourself of being someone who gets things done, which has been really helpful for me now, because one of the things I do with my team is, if they're ever overworked, I say, give me the boring stuff, right? You guys do the fun stuff, give me the boring stuff. And then what you have is...
I'm sure you're going to get plenty of it now in the next few weeks.
I know. A great buy-in from your team from that. They see you as...
They see you doing the stuff that, maybe they don't want to do either.
Exactly.
They know they have to do it. So I guess the last question, what's the one piece of advice, you give to our listeners?
Work. Like that point about being the person who puts in the extra hours. I think it will serve young professionals way more than anything else. It'll be better than any education you can do. Just being the person that someone relies on. So putting your hand up for work and then making sure that you're getting it done and getting it done to a good quality. But outwork everyone is the easiest way to progress. If you work harder than everyone else, you will progress very, very quickly.
No, perfect. Well, look, thank you
for
coming in. And look, I think, Ben, if you are listening, you've got a good shout out on this thing. Maybe we need to get you in the seat here. I think I said it to him a few years ago, but it'd be great to get Ben in as well, to get his perspective. He's obviously been such a big influence on your career. So I guess, James, thank you so much for coming in, and looking forward to seeing your journey continue.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I think, again, shout out Alchemy for getting my first job in startups.
No worries, man. Thank you very much. Cheers. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and make sure to subscribe to our podcast. See you on our next episode.